The readings for Thursday, October 13th. The epistle reading for today comes from St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians, chapter 5, verse 33, and chapter 6, verses 1 through 9. Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you and you may live long on the earth. And you, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and admonition of the Lord. Bondservants, be obedient to those who are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in sincerity of heart as to Christ. Not with eye service as non-pleasers, but as bondservants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, with good will doing service as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that whatever good anyone does, he will receive the same from the Lord, whether he is a slave or free. And you, masters, do the same things to them, giving up threatening, knowing that your own master also is in heaven, and there is no partiality with him. All right. I have some footnotes from the Orthodox Study Bible. We're going to read some previous footnotes that we've read from other readings, just because they overlap. So, for verse 21, chapter 5, verses 21 through chapter 6, verse 9, it says that verse 21 is a transition to the theme of the next section, where Paul applies the idea of mutual submission to the most basic human relationships, those in the household. And for verses 22 through 33, which that very last one being where we started today, I think the bulk of that was what we read yesterday. The model is Christ and the church, verse 32, which is then applied to marriage. Yet Christian marriage helps us to understand the mystery of the church. Number 1, for wives, concerning headship, verses 22 through 24, in both the church and marriage, there is one who acts as head, who leads. As man, Christ is first among equals, not superior to us in nature, yet he alone is the head of the church, verse 23. Likewise, wives are called to submit to their husbands as equals. For husbands, number 2, for husbands, concerning sacrificial love, verses 25 through 31, Paul writes 3 sentences to wives, but writes at greater length to impress on husbands that they should love their wives. Just as the wife's submission is to accept headship of the husband's submission to his wife is to sacrifice himself for her. In ancient Israel, the bride would bathe and dress and be escorted to the bridegroom by his friends. In the church, baptism is that bathing and dressing in which we put on Christ, verse 26, and the groom himself, Christ, escorts us, verse 27. In the church, the baptized are one humanity, one flesh with Christ. In marriage, husband and wife are one flesh with each other. And for chapter 6, verses 1 through 4, children are expected to obey and respect their parents. The meaning of the Greek word for obey, hupakuo, I don't know. Guys, I might have to just look up Greek. I don't speak it. It begins with the idea of listening attentively. The caution regarding the fathers puts a restraint and requirement of godly instruction on the parent. For verses 5 through 8, as with marriage, Paul does not seek to alter the existing social structure, but he does insist that both marriage and the master-slave relationship, nowadays employer-employee, are different when Christians are involved. The expectations for the slave are similar to those for a wife and for children, sincere obedience. Paul, however, unlike the culture around him, insists that, in God's eyes, the good done by a slave is the same as that done by a free man. Before Christ, they are equal. And for verse 9, masters are curtly warned against intimidation. They must remember their own master, who is not biased in their favor just because they are earthly masters. And our gospel reading for today is from the book of Luke, chapter 9, verses 7 through 11. Now Herod the Tetrarch heard of all that was done by him, and he was perplexed, because it was said by some that John had risen from the dead, and by some that Elijah had appeared, and by others that one of the old prophets had risen again. Herod said, John I have beheaded, but who is this of whom I hear such things? So he sought to see him. And the apostles, when they had returned, told him all that they had done. Then he took them and went aside privately into a deserted place belonging to the city called Bethesda. But when the multitudes knew it, they followed him, and he received them and spoke to them about the kingdom of God, and healed those who had need of healing. A footnote from the Orthodox Study Bible for verses 7 through 9. This is the same Herod to whom Pilate would send Jesus during his trial, chapter 23, verse 7. He is the son of the Herod who slew the innocent infants in Bethlehem. See Matthew chapter 2, verse 16. The incident of the beheading of St. John is found in Mark chapter 6, verses 14 through 28. Well, that's going to do it for today, brothers and sisters. Please say a prayer for me, a sinner, and have a fabulous Thursday.